We live. Lafayette Mandala, Bibi Fahudier. It's your favorite warrior, Blak Pantha, in the building on this Saturday, 12 noon. We getting into is African spirituality a religion? I got as always, my right, my left hand man. We got Brother Sean in the building. What's going on, Brother Sean?
Peace. I'm for tuning in. Like to say, share the show. It'll be a magnificent build.
All right. Brother Kofi, what's going on, Brother Kofi?
Lafayette, evening. Peace to the family. I'm just ready to get it in. Folks, get your pen and paper out.
All right. So a little bit about the show before I get into it. I was with Unc at the Black Dot Bookstore in Atlanta at 6984 Main Street, Lithonia, Georgia. If you're in Georgia, check it out. But we were having a conversation with a brother, and he was asking about African spirituality, and he was asking about religion, and I had the thought, what religious category does African spirituality fit into? And as I was having that conversation, I thought to myself, I should do a presentation on that. Excuse me, because a lot of people not only don't know that much about African spirituality, but they don't know the religious categories that are out there. In doing this research, I found out there's a lot of religious categories that I never heard of. Some are very close to African spiritual concepts. Some are very far away. So, that prompted me to do this presentation. But before I start, let me say this. There's been a lot of talk about African spirituality in the last 2 days. There's people that are interested in African traditions. There's people that have questions. There's people that just want to make statements. There's people that just want to talk. Before you can learn, critique, or make any type of statement about anything in life, you have to study it. You have to read about it. You have to go experience it. You have to do these things, because this will give you a total picture of what we're talking about, a 360 image of African traditions as a whole. African traditions across the continent are very, 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 very similar. They do have differences. Some differences are minute, some differences are major. So it takes intense study, just like we study everything else, to really get a grasp of what African spirituality is to the African, its relation to people in the diaspora, how it's different in the continent versus the diaspora, and various parts in the world. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and kick off the show. I'm not going to talk your head off. Just going to give some quick shout outs to people in the chat. Peace, Vyasa Gala. Peace to you. Peace, September Mary Amen. Peace, brother. OG Gorilla P. Conman Silverback, a Bibi Fahudier. That's what it is. African, a Bibi Fahudier, for those that don't know, simply means African liberation. So I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm going to share my screen. We about to get it going. And I'm just waiting. I'm looking at the show to make sure my screen is in fact sharing, and it is. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and hit the play button. Let's get it popping today. All right. Is African spirituality a religion? By myself, Blak Pantha, also known as Ifadele Akinloye Egulana, Ola Makinde Adebanke, and as I always say, if you don't feel like saying any of that, just call me Blak Pantha. Now, the symbols on the front of these are from various religions. Some you may recognize, some you may not. But I wanted to paint a picture of how religion isn't just in one box as far as geographical locations and everything. But we will go over the major religions briefly and then get into categories of religion and then get into African spirituality. So this is the definition of religion, more or less. You're going to see why I say more or less. Religion may be defined as a cultural system of design, behaviors, and practices, worldviews, texts, sanctified places, prophecies, ethics, or organization that relates humanity to the supernatural, transcendental, or spiritual elements. However, there is no scholarly consensus over what precisely constitutes a religion. I'm going to say that again. There is no scholarly consensus over what precisely constitutes a religion. Scholars have failed to agree on a definition of religion. There are, however, two general definition systems: the sociological/functional and the phenomenological philosophical definition. Religion is a modern Western concept. I'm going to say that again because that's going to come up. Religion is a modern Western concept. Parallel concepts are found in many current and past cultures. There is no equivalent term for religion in many languages, especially African languages, specifically, as I should say. Scholars have found it difficult to develop a consistent definition, with some giving up on the possibility of a definition. Others argue that regardless of its definition, it is not appropriate to apply it to non-Western cultures. So we have a source here from the Macmillan Encyclopedia of Religion. It states, the very attempt to define religion to find some distinctive or possibly unique essence or set of qualities that distinguish the religions from the remainder of human life is primarily a Western concern. See that Western keep popping up there. The attempt is a natural consequence of Western speculative, intellectualistic, and scientific disposition. It is also the product of a dominant Western religious mode, what is called Judeo-Christian climate, or more accurately, the theistic inheritance from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The theistic form of belief in this tradition, even when downgraded culturally, is formative of the dichotomous Western view of religion. That is, the basic structure of theism is essentially a distinction between a transcendent deity and all else, between the creator and his creation, between God and man. There are estimated 10,000 distinct religions worldwide, but about 84% of the world's population is affiliated with one of the 5 largest religious groups, namely Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, or forms of folk religion. We will go over what folk religion is for those that are not familiar. But listen to the picture that Macmillan Encyclopedia of Religions is creating. He is saying that this is a Western problem. Westerners love to define things. In Africa, what they would call religion is simply a way of life, simply what they do, not something they necessarily join, something that is a birthright. So that is a distinct difference right off the bat. Now look at my pie chart here. This is a study of the size of the major religious groups. The date is 2010, and it's a global population study. Now, we see right off the bat, 31.5% of the world's population are Christians. That's the highest They are the kings of religion. Right after them is 23.2% Muslims. Then you have 16.3% unaffiliated. And I really don't know what unaffiliated entails. I have questions about what unaffiliated means, because you have Christians that are unaffiliated. They call them non-denominational. So I would have to do more research on that. You have 15% of the global population who are Hindus, 7.1% of the population who are Buddhist, 5.9% of the population who are folk religionists. Remember that, we'll go over that later. And 0.8% are what they categorize as other religions. Now, Brother Sean, Brother Kofi, I got a question for y'all on my panel. Where do you think they categorized African spirituality in this chart?
Could it be folk religious?
You are correct. Folk religious is what they categorize African spirituality is. But I don't want to get people confused. This 5.9% is not just Africans or people that practice African spirituality. They encompass a variety of religions like Wicca, Native American religions, Australian Aboriginal religions, and things of that nature. So I don't want people to get confused with that. But that's where they throw us in at, family. So I wanted to put this chart up, right? This is the majority religion by country. Countries are colored according to the major religion. The darker shade represents the greater prevalence of the majority of the religion. So if you look at the United States, Christianed out, right? If you look at South America, Christian out, even more Christian out, because you see the brighter red in South America, or the darker red. Now let's look at Africa. It's almost carved right down the middle. You see Muslims in the north and in the west and in the south and in the central, some of the east, but they have a Muslim influence with what looks like Eritrea or Somalia area. But for the most part, the central and the south are Christians. Only a few specks you see are either no clear majority, which is around the Benin and Nigerian area. And also that looks like maybe, no, that's not Togo. That may be Gabon. And a tip of what looks like either Gambia or Senegal. And that's it, family. The rest of Africa is religioned out. Now let's go down to the bottom. It says 9 countries have no clear religious majority. So we're looking at Guinea-Bissau, the Ivory Coast, Maku, I don't know where Maku is, Nigeria, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Togo, and Vietnam. There are no other countries in which adherents of folk religions make up the clear majority. So remember that folk religion came up again. There are also no countries in which followers of other religions such as Baha'i, Jainis, Sikhs, Shintoists, Taoists, or followers of Tenriko, Wiccans, or Zoroastrians make up a clear majority. So what exactly is folk religion, and why do they keep saying it? In religious studies and folkloristics, folk religion, popular religion, or vernacular religion comprises of various forms and expressions of religion that are distinct from the official doctrines and practices of organized religion. The precise definition of folk religion varies among scholars. Sometimes it is also termed popular belief. It consists of ethnic or religious customs under the umbrella of religion, but outside of the official doctrine and practices. So let's pause there for a second. They're saying that folk religion is a type of spinoff from the dominant religion. Keep that in mind. There is also folk Christianity. A lot of people don't know that. It's defined differently by various scholars. Definitions include the Christianity practiced by a conquered people. So, you know, one of the questions I ask people is, do Black folks practice folk Christianity? Something to think about. Christianity, as most people live it, a term used to overcome the division of beliefs into orthodox and unorthodox. Christianity as impacted by superstition as practiced by certain geographical Christian groups, and Christianity defines in cultural terms without reference to the theologies and histories. Interesting. Folk Islam is an umbrella term used to collectively describe a form of Islam that incorporate native folks' beliefs and practices. So they're saying if Islam took over your particular town, you would infuse your traditional practices with Islam, and that would be described as folk Islam. Folk Islam has been described as the Islam of urban, poor, country, people, and tribes. So again, we have folk Christianity that says this is Christianity practiced by a conquered people. Now we have Islam in another degrading terminology, urban, country, urban, poor, country, people, and tribes. Interesting. In contrast to Orthodox or high Islam, you see what they did there? Regular Islam is high. Folk Islam is urban and poor. Sufism and Sufi concepts are often integrated into folk Islam. Folk Judaism. The definition of Jewish folk religion as consisting of ideas and practices that wish lists not meeting with the approval of religious leaders enjoyed wide popularity such that they must be included in what he termed the field of religion. So again, we're seeing a disapproval. We're seeing a pattern here. People do not approve of folk religions in the dominant Abrahamic faiths. So when they put African spirituality in these categorized as folk religion, what they're saying is you are practicing a watered down version of what they are practicing, which is very ironic because it's actually the other way around. We know that from studying different texts of African folklore within their spiritual systems. But you see how they have turned this around. So now you're practicing the antiquated system and they're practicing the high system. That's exactly what they've done. Now, in my opinion, there's no such thing as folk religion amongst African spirituality, because as you can see here, folk religion is a spinoff of a dominant religion. What is the spinoff religion that, let's say, voodoo is spinning off from? What is the spinoff religion that our ancestors were spinning off from? What was the spinoff religion that our Khan brothers in the Ghana were spinning off from? It doesn't exist. Somebody got their mic on? Okay, I'll continue. So let's briefly go over some religions, and I'm going to paint a picture for you. Christianity is an Abrahamic monotheistic religious group based on the life teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, also known as Christians, as the Christ. Its adherents believe that Jesus is the Son of God, the Logos, the Savior of humanity, who's come as the Messiah, Christ, who's prophesied in the Old Testament as described in the Bible. Christianity and its ethics have been played a prominent role in the shaping of Western civilization. Yeah, we know that to be true. Main points include belief in God, the Father, Jesus Christ, as the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit. So this is what Unc means when he talks about their God and our God not the same. You see what they say. Belief in God, the Father, Jesus Christ as the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit. So there's no separation. That's vastly different from the African narrative. It goes on to say the death, descent into hell, resurrection, and ascension of Christ, the holiness of the church and the communion of the saints, Christ's second coming, the day of judgment and salvation of the faithful. If you don't believe in these tenets, you are not a Christian. Islam. It's an Abrahamic monotheistic religion teaching that there is only one God, Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Islam teaches that God is merciful, all-powerful, unique, and has guided mankind through the prophets, revealed scriptures, and natural signs. The primary scriptures of Islam and the Quran, viewed by Muslims as the verbatim word of God, and the teachings of the normative and examples of these are called the Sunnah, composed of accounts called Hadith of Muhammad. And there's a date for you there as well. Muslims consider the Quran to be the unaltered final revelation of God. Like other Abrahamic religions, Islam also teaches a final judgment with a righteous reward of paradise and unrighteous punishment in hell. Religious concepts and practices include the 5 pillars of Islam, which are obligatory acts of worship, following the Islamic law, Sharia, which touches on virtually every aspect of life and society, from banking and welfare to women and environment. The cities of Mecca and Medina and Jerusalem are home to the 3 holiest cities in Islam. Judaism is the religion of the Jewish people. I feel like I need to say that again. The religion of the Jewish people. It is an ancient monotheistic Abrahamic religion with the Torah as its foundation text. It encompasses the religion, philosophy, and the culture of the Jewish people. Judaism is considered by the religious Jews to be the expression of the covenant that God established with the children of Israel. Judaism encompasses a wide corpus of texts, practices, theological positions, and forms of organization. The Torah is part of a larger text known as the Tanakh, or the Hebrew Bible, and the supplemental oral tradition represented by later texts, such as the Midrash and the Talmud, with between 14.5 and 17.4 million adherents worldwide. Buddhism is an Indian religion. Buddhism is an Indian religion. Buddhism is an Indian religion. I just have to say that for, people in the community that want to advocate for Buddha. It is an Indian religion. If you are not Indian, this is not your culture. Buddhism encompasses a variety of traditions, beliefs, spiritual practices, largely based on the oral teachings attributed to Buddha. As resulting of inherited philosophies, Buddhism originated in ancient India as a Shramana tradition sometime between the 6th and 4th century BCE, spreading throughout most of Asia. 2 major extant branches of Buddhism are generally recognized by scholars: the Theravada, which is the school of the elders, and the Mahayana, which is described in Sanskrit as the great vehicle. All Buddhist traditions share the goals of overcoming suffering, the cycle of death and rebirth, either by the attainment of nirvana or the path of Buddhahood. Buddhist scholars vary in their interpretation of the path to liberation. The relative importance and canonicity assigned to various Buddhist texts, and their specific teaching and practices. Widely observed practices include taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Observe the moral precepts, monasticism, meditation, and cultivation of paramitas, which are virtues. Buddhist texts were initially passed on orally by monks, but were later written down and composed of manuscripts in various Indo-Aryan languages, which were then translated into other languages as Buddhism spread. Vinaya Sutra and Abhidharma. Hinduism, another Indian religion. It's a way of life widely practiced by the Indian subcontinent. Hinduism has been called the oldest religion in the world. And some practitioners and scholars refer to it as Santa Dharma, the eternal religion, or the eternal way, beyond human history. Scholars regard Hinduism as a fusion of synthesis of various Indian cultures and traditions with diverse roots and no founder. This Hindu synthesis started to develop between 500 BCE and 300 CE following the Vedic period. Although Hinduism contains a broad range of philosophies, it is linked to by the shared concepts, recognizable rituals, cosmology, shared textual resources, and pilgrimage to sacred sites. Hindu texts are classified into Smruti, which means heard, Smrti, which means remembered. These texts discuss theology, philosophy, mythology, Vedic yanja, yoga, agamic rituals, and temple building, among other topics. Major scriptures include the Vedas texts and the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Agamas. Sources of authority and eternal truths in its texts play an important role, but there is also a strong Hindu tradition of questioning authority in order to deepen the understanding of these truths and to further develop the tradition. You can't forget about the Zoroastrians. It's one of the world's oldest religions and remains active as a monotheistic faith centered around a dualistic cosmology of good and evil and an eschatology predicting the ultimate destruction of evil, ascribed to the teachings of an Iranian-speaking prophet Zoroaster. It exalts the deity of wisdom, Ahura Mazda, which is a wise lord and his supreme being. Major features of Zoroastrianism, such as Messianism, judgment after death, heaven and hell, and free will, have influenced other religious systems, including Second Temple Judaism, Gnosticism, Christianity, and Islam. The important texts of the religion are those of the Avesta, which includes the writing of Zoroaster, known as the Gathas, the enigmatic poems that define the religious precepts, and the Yansa scripture, the full name by which Zoroaster addressed the deity, Ahura, the Lord Creator, and Mazda, supremely wise. The religious philosophy of Zoroaster divided the early Iranian gods of the Proto-Indo-Iranian tradition, but focused on responsibility and did not create a devil per se. Zoroaster proclaimed that there is only one God, singularly creative and sustaining force of the universe, and that human beings are given a right of choice. Because of their cause and effect, they are responsible for the consequences of their choices. The contesting force of Ahura Mazda, called Angra Mainyu, or angry spirit, and that's the closest thing they have to devil in their concept. Well, there's another devil in their concept, but it's post Zoroastrian scripture that introduces Ahriman as a devil. In Zoroastrianism, the purpose in life is to be amongst those who renew the world, to make the world progress towards perfection. Its basic maxims include good thoughts, good words, good deeds. There is only one path, and that is the path of truth. Do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and then all beneficial rewards will come to you also. Oops. So, out of all those religions I read, there is a main component they have what's called a volume of sacred law. Now, for those of you that never heard of this term, it's a Masonic term, and it's a term for whatever religious or philosophical texts are displayed during a lodge meeting. So, Bible, Quran, Tao Te Ching, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedic texts, all of these are volumes of sacred law, and they are designed to teach us the all-important duties we owe to God, to our neighbors, and to ourselves. It is to be regarded as the unerring standard of truth and justice, teaching us to believe in wise dispensation of divine providence, to rule and govern our faith. Now, I have getting access down there for a reason. In all religions, there is one, maybe two books that you can go to look at and read all about that particular religion. There's no such concept in African spirituality. And I know people are going to say, well, what about Kemet? Kemet has 100 books that don't correlate with each other and is telling you different things. You have, so many texts. The Book of Life, the Instructions of Ptahhotep, the Coffin text, the Purim Heru. All of these different books tell you different things. And you're not going to learn about their entire tradition in one book. So that's another major difference between African spirituality and religion. So since scholars can't get together on a definition of religion, I decided to create my own. This is my working definition of religion, and it should be thought about during the course of this presentation. Religion is a modern, primarily Western concept, as many of our examples told us, and cultural belief system that encompasses belief in a higher power and has a dependence on a volume of sacred law to instruct its believers on morality and faith. It is not centered around testing and proving. None of those religions are going to test anything for you. They are simply going to tell you to believe. So we got a few religious categories here. Animism, monotheism, polytheism, panentheism, pantheism, Neoplatonism, Hinduism, Molitarism, and Theonism. You may not have heard of all of them, but we will break them down. Animism. And yes, that picture is the man that created animism. Animism is a religious belief that objects, places, creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. Potentially, animism perceives all things, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, human handwork, and perhaps even words as animated and alive. Animism is the world's oldest religion. Animism predates any form of organized religion and is said to contain the oldest spiritual and supernatural perspective in the world. It dates back to the Paleolithic age, to a time when humans roamed in the plains, hunting, gathering, communicating with the spirit of nature. Now that sounds like it has some elements in it that encompass African spirituality, right? And often, tell you a trick for those young scholars out here just starting to study. When you hear the term animism in books, they are talking about African spirituality. That is how they categorize it in books.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. Every time you read something that's dealing on the continent of Africa, those tribes that may be practicing their indigenous spiritual systems, you're going to always see the word animism. I don't care what you read, you're going to always see this word come up.
Correct. Every time. That's what it is. Largely due to ethno-linguistic and cultural discrepancies, the opinion has differed on whether animism refers to an ancestral mode of experience common indigenous peoples around the world or to a full-blown fledged religion in its own right. Currently acceptable definition of animism was only developed in the late 19th century by Sir Edward Tyler, who created it as one of the anthropology's earliest concepts, if not the first. The idea of animism was developed by the anthropologist Sir Edward in his book, 1871 book, Primitive Culture. That's right. Primitive culture. That's what they call us. In which he defined it as the general doctrine of souls and other spiritual beings in general. According to Tyler, animism often includes an idea of pervading life and will in nature, a belief that natural objects and other than humans have souls. That's where it goes left. And African spirituality is not that these things have souls, it's that they have what's called spirit. And we can get into what spirit is later, but it's not that they have souls. So, Mr. Edward Tyler, you can keep your primitive culture label. You almost had it, but you did not describe African spirituality in its totality. So we must cross animism off the list. Moving on. Well, we know this one won't fit, but we have to do it our due diligence anyway. Monotheism has been defined as a belief in the existence of one God that created the world and all powerful and intervenes in the world. The broader definition of monotheism is a belief in one God. The broader definition of monotheism categorizes these traditions: Babaism, Baha'i faith, Balinese Hinduism, Chaldai, Shintoism, Christianity, deism, in Kankar, Hindu sects such as Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Islam, Judaism, Mandaism, Rastafari, Shiko Nole, Sikhism, Tengrism, Tenriko, Yazdiism, Zoroastrianism, and elements of pre-monotheistic thought are found early in religions such as, now look what they snuck in there now, Atenism. And for those that study Kemet know who Aten is, but we're going to address that claim later. Ancient Chinese religion and Yaoism. You notice the only link to monotheism that they try to argue is Atenism and Kemet, which is false and we'll deal with later. So we can cross monotheism off the list because we know that Africans are not simply monotheistic. But are they polytheistic? I hear the argument a lot. So let's break it down. Polytheism is the worship of belief in multiple deities, which are usually assembled into a pantheon of gods and goddesses, along with their own religion and rituals. In most religions, while except polytheism, the different gods and goddesses are representation of forces of natural and ancestral principles, and can be viewed as either autonomous or as aspects of emanations of a creator deity, transcendental, absolute principle, monistic theologies, which manifests intimately in nature, such as pantheistic and panentheistic theologies. Now that sounds like you're on a good track now, but let's read further. Polytheism is a type of theism. With theism, it contrasts with monotheism, the belief in a singular God, in most cases transcendent. Polytheists do not always worship all the gods equally, but they can be henotheists, specializing in the worship of one particular deity. Other polytheists can be Cathion theists, worshiping different deities at different times. Hard polytheism is the belief that gods are distinct, separate, real divine beings rather than psychological archetypes or personifications of natural forces. That's where you lose African spirituality. African spirituality always, almost always suggests that the deities that they worship and love are natural forces, archetypes, personifications. So this is where polytheism falls off the list. Hard polytheists reject the idea that all gods are one God. Hard polytheists do not necessarily consider God, the God of all cultures, as being equal, real, a theological position formerly known as integrational polytheism or omnism. This is contrasted with soft polytheism, which holds that gods may be aspects of only one God, that the pantheons of other cultures are representative of a single pantheon. So even with soft polytheism, Africans don't do that. They're tribal people. The God people do not believe that the Voodoo people's gods are just their gods in different names. They don't believe that. Even though they may represent the same natural forces, they are very tribal. So it goes on to say that the pantheons of other cultures are representative of a single pantheon, psychological archetype, or personifications of natural forces. So we can cross polytheism off the list. It's neither hard nor soft in totality with African spirituality. Now, this is one I didn't know about. I was really looking for pantheism, but I stumbled across panentheism. Now, panentheism is the belief that the divine pervades, interpenetrates every part of the universe, and also extends beyond time and space. That sounds very similar to African spirituality. The term was coined by a German philosopher called Krauss in 1828 to distinguish the ideas of his colleague George Hegel and Friedrich Wilhelm, as well as Joseph Schelling, about the relation of God and the universe from the supposed pantheism of Braut Spinoza. So this was created to combat pantheism. Interesting. In panentheism, God is viewed as the soul of the universe. That's problematic for African spirituality, but we'll go back to that. The universal spirit present everywhere, which at same time transcends all things created. While pantheism asserts that all is God, panentheism claims God is greater than the universe. Some version of panentheism suggests that the universe is nothing more than a manifestation of God. In addition, some forms indicate that the universe is contained within God. This is not an African concept. The African concept of God is that God is existence itself and nothing exists outside of it. So saying that that God is greater than the universe is something you won't find in African traditions. Like in Kabbalah, the concept of Tsim Tsum, also much of Hindu thought and consistently Buddhist philosophy, is highly characterized in panentheism and pantheism. You see how they do not mention African spirituality in those examples. The basic tradition, however, on which Krauss' concept was built seems to have been a Neoplantic philosophy as its successors in Western philosophy and Orthodox theology. We will get to Neoplatonic philosophy as well. So this was what I was looking for. Pantheism is a belief that reality is identical with the divinity. What I just said, that Africans believe that God is existence. So they're on the right track. It also says that all things compose of all-encompassing immanent God. Pantheists believe do not recognize a distinct personal anthropomorphic God and instead characterizes a broad range of doctrines, differing in forms of relationships between reality and divinity. Pantheists are monoists. So this is where they drop off the list. Africans often anthropomorphize their deities in their stories. You will hear stories about the day that Oludumare was walking around, the day that Rug decided to take a stroll, the day that Ra cried tears. You will hear these accounts. So this is where they fall off the list. And being that pantheists are monoists, which means they have an element of monotheism in their system, they are subsequently disqualified. Pantheism was popularized in Western culture as a theology and philosophy based on the work of the 17th century philosopher Baruch Spinoza, particularly in his book Ethics, published in 1677. The term pantheism was coined by a mathematician, Joseph Raption, in 1697, and has since been used to describe beliefs of a variety of people and organizations. So we can cross that off the list. I told you we were going to get to this. Neoplantism. Hope I'm saying it right. Is a term used to designate a strand of Plantic philosophy. Now, if you don't know who Plotinus is, he was a Greek during the Hellenistic period. And he's usually not mentioned in the same circles as the famous Greek Socrates, Aristotle, and all of them, but he was around during this era. So Plotinus began in the 3rd century AD against the background of the Hellenistic philosophy and religion. So he started to go against the grain. The term does not encapsulate a set of ideas as much as it encapsulates a chain of thinkers, which began with the ominous Sacus and his student Plotinus, and which stretches to the 6th century AD, even though Neoplantism primarily circumscribes the thinkers who are now labeled as Neoplantists and not their ideas. There are some ideas that are common to Neoplantic systems. For example, the monistic, there's that word again, idea that all of reality can be derived from a single principle, the one. The term is a modern historiographical term, and the thinkers to whom it is now applied did not use it to describe themselves. So they didn't even use some of these philosophies to describe themselves. And it seems to have taken on a new perspective in present time. The Neoplantists believed in human perfection and happiness were attainable in this world without awaiting an afterlife. Perfection and happiness seem as synonymous, could be achieved through philosophical contemplation. Now, this seems to be more philosophy than a religious category, although they categorize it as a religious category. But for one thing, perfection and happiness is not equivalent in African spirituality. And although we strive to have good character, we do not strive to be perfect. So that's a main difference. After bodily, well, I'll take that back. You may strive to be perfect, but we don't believe it's really attainable. The Neoplantists believe that human perfection is obtainable. After bodily death, the soul takes up a level in the afterlife corresponding with the level at which it had lived during its earthly life. Neoplantists believe that the principle of reincarnation, although the most pure and holy souls would dwell in the highest regions, the impure soul will undergo a purification before descending again to be reincarnated into a new body, perhaps into an animal form. This is another concept you will not see in African spirituality as far as reincarnation is concerned. Humans reincarnate into humans in Africa. Plotinus believe that a soul may be reincarnated into another human or even another different sort of animal. So we can cross this off the list as well. Henotheism. Henotheism, meaning one God, is a worship of a single God while not denying the existence or possible existence of other deities. It was created by Frederick Schelling. He coined the word, and Frederick Welker used it to depict primitive monotheism amongst the ancient Greeks. So they saw the Greeks as their primitive form of religion before they evolved into what they consider higher religion. And one of the differences right off the bat is In African spirituality, the pantheon is clearly defined. You don't have to worry about the possible existence of other deities. They're defined very, very strictly, very, very clearly. So this is already not fitting. The latter term is an extension of Hindotheism from Kath Henotheon, meaning one God at a time. Henotheism refers to a pluralistic theology, wherein different deities are viewed to be of unitary equivalence and divine essence. Another term related to henotheism is equitheism, referring to the belief that all gods are equal. Another un-African belief. Further, the term henotheism does not exclude monoism, non-dualism, or dualism. For those not familiar with those terms, dualism talks about the unification of the body and mind. We already know what monoism is from previous slides, and non-dualism combats dualism, separating the body and mind. So we can scrap Hinduism off the list. As you can see in this picture, this is the concept. The God is me, 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 me. But there may be other gods out there, but it's all about me. So I told you I was going to get back to Atenism. This is what they try to sneak in. Monolatrism. Monolatry is distinguished from monotheism, which asserts the existence of only one God, and henotheism, a religious system in which believers worship one God without denying that others may worship different gods with equal validity. So this is why this is false. And people that read Egyptian texts will tell you this. They paint the picture that when Akhenaten created Aten and did away with the priesthood of Amen, that they only worshiped Aten. That is false. If you read the text, you will see the same netures that were around Amen that are around Aten. You will see the same exact neturus. All they did was switch the supreme deity's name. That's it. You will see Heru, you will see Asar, you will see Anpu, you will see Aset, you will see all of the same deities of the previous kingship with Aten, but you will just not see Amen. And right after Akhenaten got out of power, and his son took the throne, King Tut, it went back to the priesthood of Amen. So we can debunk the myth that Atenism is monolatry or monotheistic. Cathenotheism, that's hard to say. Cathenotheism is a term coined by the philologist Max Mueller to mean the worship of one God at a time. It is closely related to henotheism, which we've already debunked, and the worship of one God while not rejecting the existence of other gods. We've heard this before. Mueller coined the term in the reference to the Vedas, which is the Hindu text, where he explained each deity is treated as supreme in its own term. There's only one supreme deity in African spirituality. That's it. Somebody got a mic, hot mic. All right, I'll continue. So let's take the Greeks, for example. The Greeks believed Zeus was the supreme being. He was their all in all, the supreme force. They didn't treat Apollo like he was a supreme force. They didn't treat Hera like he was a supreme force. Zeus was the man that was high on the hill. So that would be in direct contrast to this principle. So let's get into some African traditional systems, right? Let's see the difference. Dogon. According to the Dogon, the highest creator is the sky god Amma. So like I just said, The supreme deity is clearly defined in African traditions. Nomo was the first living creature created by the sky god Amma and can be a proper name of an individual or can refer to a group of spirits as a whole. Nomo is our ancestral spirits, sometimes referred to as deities. The word Nomo is derived from a Dogon word meaning to make one drink. The Nomos are actually described as fish-like creatures. Folk art depictions of Nomos show creatures in a humanoid upper torso, legs, and feet, and a fish like a lower torso and a tail. The Nomos are also referred to masters of the water, the monitors, and the teachers. So let's stop right there. Nomo is an amalgamation of spirits, of ancestral spirits. So there are progenitors in the Dogon tradition, and they come out of the water and become mammals. That's a very interesting account, and it's one that science has speculated on as well. So the difference is our mythological stories contain scientific principles or scientific narratives. You will not find this in the majority of religions. Let's keep going. Amma is the Dogon name for Amen. So you remember in one of the religious categories that they don't acknowledge other deities. Apparently the Dogon do. Amma is described as an intelligent consciousness behind all creation and awareness with all beings. Amma, he who rests upon nothing. Po is the black hole, which is the core of our galaxy. What other religion you've ever heard of talks about black holes? Po, the egg of the world, is the first principal seed. Po means seed in the Dogon language. The Dogon described Po as the smallest thing in the world, alluding to the fact that the matter of the black hole is the densest, the most compact form of matter in creation. They say it's invisible at the center. It spins, it scatters all the particles of matter in a sonorous and luminous motion, yet remains inaudible and invisible. The Dogon say Amma placed his world in Po, thus making it the image of the creator in the womb of Amma. So the Dogon have a lot of mythology that suggests scientific principles. The Potolo, or the Star of Being, everybody knows that's the famous Sirius B, right? So their folklore is not just belief. It's something tangible. It's something we know exists in our universe. And that is one of the main differences in African spirituality versus religion. You do not have to believe in black holes. They just simply exist. You do not have to believe in Sirius B. It just simply exists. Let's go on. Okay, you may not have heard of this tradition, but these are the Surher people out of Senegambia. The creation myth of the Surher people is intricately linked to the first trees created on the planet Earth by Rube. Let's stop right there. Scientists have speculated that some of the first beings on Earth were trees. Earth formation began in a swamp. The Earth was not fully formed until long after the creation of the first three worlds: the water of the underworld, the air of the higher world, and the earth. So these are elements coming together to make Earth. Rug is the creator and the fashioner of the universe and everything in it. The creation is based on a mythical cosmic egg and the principle of chaos. You may have heard the principle that Freemasons use, order out of chaos. This is one of his early models. The Surher people believe in a supreme deity, Rug, sometimes called Rug Sini, Rug the immensity, Rug the merciful God. Surher tradition deals with the various dimensions of life, death, space, and time. This is an important principle amongst God in African tradition. Time and space, space and time, existence. This is what these people believe in. Rug is an ancestral spirit, communications, and cosmology. There are no lesser gods, goddesses, supernatural spirits, or genie, such as the Fangul or the Pangul, a female protector of the Fatik region, and the arm of the sea bears the name of the god Turak. So The Sarah people, as you can go on to read, they don't have a devil. They just believe in the supreme force, and they believe in elements. As you can see, they had an air world, an earth world, a water world. So they believe in the power of natural forces that create their world. This is another tradition that you will not, another principle that you will not find in religion. The name of the Sir piece are called Saltigues, and they have been initiated with knowledge to organize people's thoughts into a single cohesive unit. So Brother Wujawu did a video the other day talking about how African spirituality encompasses psychology, and this is one of the examples. The priests who have been initiated and possess the knowledge and power to organize their thoughts into a single cohesive unit. So when they're in these sessions with their people, that is what they're trying to do. Organize your thoughts. That's what psychologists do. So it's very, very similar in this aspect. The Mbuti people, this is Unc's favorite people. The little children of the forest, sometimes called
Yes,
twats.
sir.
What was that? Okay.
Hey, yes, sir.
Oh, brother.
That's my people. They my heroes.
Unc, I didn't even know you was in the building. Yeah, what's going on?
I've been in the building.
Oh, you know I can't see you. I got my I got my screen share. But yeah, this book right here.
Second Amendment.
Yeah, that's diversity right there with them brothers. I like that. You're doing a good job. I'm enjoying the presentation, bro.
Appreciate it.
All right.
The Convoom created mankind from clay. Where have we heard this before? The black people were made from black clay. The white people were made from white clay, and the pygmies themselves from red clay. He also created the animals that are needed by hunters. So remember when we were talking about folk etymology, where they expressed the narrative that they are practicing the dominant and true religion, and we are practicing the folk or the spin-off religion, then why is it that our principles that are in our tradition seem to make it into your traditions thousands of years later? You just heard that their God created mankind from clay. This is a common story in the Bible that everybody knows, but the Mbuti people have been around longer than Christianity. I just wanted to make that point. A Mbuti soul is called a megbe. When a man dies, his son places his mouth over his to draw a part of the mbe out. Now, this is similar to the opening of the mouth ceremony in Kemet, and you can read that as a reference to what's going on here. Another part inhabits the man's totem animal. So totems are not just Native American origin. Africans have totems as well. If the son does not inhale the megbe, or the totem animal is later killed, it may escape into the forest where it becomes semi-visible, being called Lodi, and lives forever with others animals that are like it. Mbuti people live in the forest, for those that don't know. And it's common that they believe the forest is their supreme deity manifestation. So the forest gives them food, the forest gives them shelter, the forest gives them protection from the sun. So this is why they named the forest their deity. The Zulu people, or the Ngoma. Traditionally, the more strongly held Zulu belief was in ancestor spirits who had the power to intervene in other people's lives for good or ill. This belief continued to be widespread amongst the Zulu population. Traditionally, the Zulu recognized several elements to be present in a human being: the physical body, the breath or life force. Now that's interesting because Ujawa also posted something that talked about spirit being linked to breath. And I believe that is a Latin etymological term or link to it. So the Zulu people thought the same thing. They also believe the shadow, prestige, personality. Once the umoya leaves the body, the Isi Tunsi may live on as an ancestral spirit. So they're saying once we shed our physical shell, that we live on as an ancestor, pointing to the law of energy conservation, and that energy never really dies. Now, you only live on as an ancestor if certain conditions were met. That's common in African tradition. You just don't become an ancestor because you die. Behaving with Ubuntu, which is simple human kindness, or showing respect and generosity towards others enhances one's moral standing or prestige in the community and one's isi tunsi. By contrast, acting in a negative way towards others can reduce your isi tunsi, and it is possible for the isi tunsi to fade away completely. In order to appeal to the spirit world, a diviner or a sangoma must invoke the ancestors through divination process to determine the problem. Then the herbalist in Yanga prepares a mixture, mufi, to be consumed in order to influence the ancestors. Such, diviners and herbalists play an important part in the daily lives of the Zulu people. However, a distinction has been made between the white mufi, which has positive effects in the healing or the prevention or the reversal of misfortune, and the black mufi, which can bring illness, death to others, or ill-gotten wealth to the user. Do not get caught up in the colors. They are not talking about white people or black people. They're just talking about colors that represents positive and negative. But this is interesting because the private health sector has went and spent time with these sangomas to try to develop a cure for AIDS. So this is modern science acknowledging that African spiritualists or African practitioners and herbalists have cures that they may glean from. And I couldn't leave out the Mossi, right? Absolutely not. The Mossi's account of their founding is handed down through the following myth. Over 40 generations ago, a king named Naba Negada had a daughter who he would not allow to marry because she was a great warrior. So the princess Inyengada took a horse and fled into the north, which is now Mossi country. She married a local man. Their son, Uidrago Ogo, which means stallion, was sent back to his mother's homeland to be raised by his grandfather. When he grew up, he returned to the north with his cavalry from his homeland and conquered his father's people, the Biza. The marriage of the Udrago Ogo and his troops with the Biza women produced what we know as the Mossi today, a statue of Princess Iyenega on horseback in the city of, this one always give me trouble, Ouagadougou, commemorates the story. The University of Ouagadougou and Frederick Titinga Parsi Augustine Sone Grube. The system of the Mossi has three main components. There is a belief in an all-powerful creator named Windy, fertility spirits of the rain and the earth, which govern the soil and crops, and the ancestors, who affect the lives of the descendants. Again, rain, earth, elements all the time. Things you don't have to believe in, right? We know about rain, we know about earth. We know about soil and crops and agriculture and how it's so important to the pastoralists of the African. They just gave them that names. Wenanum, the supreme creator, is associated with the sun. That's another name for Windy. He is also called, well, I'll just put it in here. He's also called Windy or Naba Zidi Windy. Some of his manifestations are Tinga Windy, which is a female, Tido Windy, Siguri Windy, Ki Windy, Saga Windy. The Holy Land is called Wind Pus Neba, which means lands of the priest and priestess. The Igbo people, and they practice Odinani. Chukwu created the world and everything in it as associated with all things on earth. Chukwu is a solar deity to the ancient Igbo and the cosmos, and divided into four complex parts. Okiyi, creation. Olusi, supernatural forces or deities. Mumbo, spirit. Uwa world. The Igbo world is divided into several interconnected realms, principal among them being the realm of the living, the realm of the dead, or the ancestors' realm, and the realm of the unborn. Individuals who led an honorable life received a proper burial, proceeded to the ancestral realm, and take their place amongst the ancestors called Nidiche. They are separate from the Alusi, which are the natural forces. From there, they kept a watchful eye on the clan and are visited their loved ones among their livings with blessings such as fertility, good health, longevity, prosperity. In gratitude, the living offered sacrifices to them at the heart of the hearth. To them at the family hearth, and sought their counsel. Now, let me explain to you how the Igbo people believe in the Big Bang. Chukwu had an obi one day. An obi means divine house, like a temple. No one was allowed to enter this temple, not even his wife. One day his wife peeked in to look at the temple. This created a loud explosion, and the universe, our universe, was born from that explosion, says their oral tradition. That's exactly what the Big Bang says. So this is the difference between African spirituality and regular religion. Do you have to believe in the Big Bang? No, we have evidence for the Big Bang. No other systems on the planet have these complex stories that involve science. So it's not so much of you have to believe, you just have to study. These are my references. You can pause it. You can take a picture of it. I'll leave it up here for a couple of seconds. Some ones I want to highlight. Jewish magic and superstition and study of folk religion. That's one was interesting. What else could I highlight? Monotheism by the Encyclopedia Britannica was an interesting read. Zoroastrianism studies the Iranian religion in various monographs. That was an interesting one. And that's pretty much, you're probably wondering why you don't really see that many African references up here. And that is because a lot of them I have memorized. It's just what I do. This is what I studied. This is what I dedicated my life to doing. So a lot of them have been memorized. I did use Wikipedia for some refreshers. So that's why Wikipedia is at the end. But a lot of it is just cultures that I already knew about. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you all for coming out and experiencing this with me. And I'll take questions from the chat as always. Any of my panel, if y'all got any comments, go in.
Say, appreciate you doing the bill, man. I know it took a lot of energy and time. Just to add to that, because you threw out some African, some tribes that believed in the Big Bang. Don't forget the Dagara people. You know, we have evidence of that.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people, man, when you get into the cosmologies, you start reading and you start looking at these cosmologies, they start explaining a lot of things that we just didn't know, or some things that we just not receive as a person. But that's all I get.
Absolutely. And we're not going to know if we don't get into the actual studies. And some things, you know, some things we can talk about, we can read about. Other things we're just going to have to experience or talk to people that are actually immersed in the tradition. A lot of things we can discuss.
Hello?
What's up, bro?
What's up, man? Let me make this point. What's going on with the brothers? Brother Kofi, Sean, what's going on, Blak Pantha? How y'all doing, man?
Peace, peace, peace.
On Saturday, brother. Another Saturday.
Black African power.
Black African power, man, and the Mossi doing what they supposed to do. That's how we doing it. No matter what, we gonna stand tall. We gonna stand strong, and this is why the group was created. To deal with everything and everybody on all subjects. That's just plain and simple. And that's why the Mossi was here. Great leadership on the Mossi. Great leadership. You know what I'm saying? Amongst the brothers, man. And it's the destined to win and the focus on Africa, which is so important because, man, look, man, I love Africa, man. And at the end of the day, man, I signed up to love Africa. That's why I signed up to protect the custom and traditions of Africa. That's what I signed up for. Plain and simple. So that's what we're doing. Right, wrong, or indifferent. And we learn every day. So the environment is now officially set. You know what I'm saying? For the Mossi, man, y'all make sure y'all subscribe to the Mossi channel. It's a wealth of information. Get up in the morning before work, whatever, watch a video, get your notes together, get your notepads. The brothers has put in time, painstaking time and research, money. You know what I'm saying? And they're not getting paid for this. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. And you talked about polytheism, but you talked about hard polytheism. I think you mentioned like soft polytheism. Like most people don't even understand the different variations, bro. They just don't. You know what I'm saying? They don't understand the different variations across the board. And then they don't understand the European attempt to classify African spirituality. So, when we do something, it ain't science. When they do it, it's science. So if you talk about the Big Bang, then we just got lucky. You know what I'm saying? Or if you talk about evolution, or if you talk about transformation, you just got lucky at the subject. Or if you pick the proper herbs to cure certain things, you must have just got lucky. I mean, that's how they play it. And so it's our job as the Mossi.
It presented to me this week that
that
Africans didn't do nothing special. They just got lucky in a couple of herbs.
They got lucky.
Yeah. First of all, medicines, when you're talking about traditional culture, are not simply medicines that you just pick from the ground. There are that have to mix different herbs together to make different medicines. So that's not being lucky. That's testing and proving and experimenting. That's what that is.
Yeah, you right on point. You right on point with that, yo. But that's science though. To observe, you start off with observation and science, right? And then you take the step. You hear me?
Yes, I agree. You start out with a hypothesis. I think that this one herb might take that snake bite from you. I gotta test it on you.
That's right, bro. Yeah, I see.
Oh, you look like you got some shoes in now. Don't hide the shoes.
No, I ain't hiding the shoes.
Don't hide. I'll put the camera on you. Where the shoes at?
No, I'm moving some shoes from the car to the garage, getting some things settled because I'm ready to do some work in the store. Sister get ready to open up a juice bar, so
Okay.
I'm
I like
volunteering to help out. Huh?
I said, I like juice bars.
Oh yeah. So that's great. That's great. Well, Dada's down in the West End. So I'm gonna do some construction in there. You know what I'm saying? It's just for everybody, man. So while everybody talking crazy, man, we doing what we want to do, man. We showing them that African spirituality is real. And how you know it's real? Because, man, it like at the end of the day, I study cultures that go back, 300,000, 200,000?
Right.
So if you look at it, they wasn't praying to no particular god, right? What they did, though, they had a connection to nature. And out of that connection to nature, they developed science. We know this. You go to the records, go to UNESCO, and they tell you that the human beings in Africa led the world in technology and science for the first 2 million years. You know what I'm saying? So to think that we wasn't doing it is crazy. To think that we didn't lay the foundation is even crazier. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. So
Yeah, it's an interesting narrative
it's
that
up to this generation right here to
go ahead.
move pendulum forward because we didn't know everything and we didn't get everything right. Such is science. Such is science. So
Right.
when Europeans make mistakes, they don't say, "Oh, they want science." They just say, "Yo, they miscalculated."
and we
Ah,
miscalculate things too. And guess what? As you point out, you know, viruses, illnesses, they mutate. So it has to be a constant upgrading. The herbs that were prescribed during the time of Shango are not the same herbs that are prescribed today. And that is the job of the herbalist, to continue to experiment with herbs to see if different things work for different types of ailments. That's just what it is. And that's the same thing that your doctor chemist does. It's the same thing that pharmacists do. But why, when we do it, it gotta be bad. It gotta be wrong. It gotta be, oh, you got lucky. You got lucky with that moringa. You got lucky with the Bob. You got look, man. Who knew what it did until somebody came around and tested it?
yeah, you don't get lucky in nature, bro.
You don't
That's why I love nature, Ben. Listen, nature will show you what we had and what we didn't have. All you gotta do is study it. It'll show you all your faults, all your defaults, and all your strengths. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? It wasn't like you had wholesale people dying like that. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just people was getting healed. That's a fact. That's a fact. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not just talking about Kemet in West Africa, renowned from bringing medicine. Renowned for that. They just so renowned that they still go amongst them. So while we thinking that they can't do it, I'm telling you right now, the pharmaceutical companies are sitting down with traditional practitioners, whatever you want to say, and they're actually getting formula from them.
Absolutely.
Just say it.
We have a lot of proof of that. Let me take some questions. I see a question from the chat. Faye from Day says, how can this knowledge how can we use this knowledge, in our everyday life, being away from the motherland? Well, brother, there are some things that exclusively grow in Africa as far as herbs and things like that, but there are a lot of things that grow in America that people use in the same manner or fashion. So in one way we can use this knowledge is to heal. That's one way we can use this knowledge. We find people that study herbs, herbalists, and they can help us heal where modern physicians may fail. And I've actually had that happen. I've actually had a physician with my knees tell me, "Hey, bro, don't keep taking them what was I taking? Naproxen. Take this glucosamine chondroitin supplement. It would actually start building the cartilage back in your knees, versus when you keep taking that, you're going to end up with an ulcer." So that happens sometimes. As far as the knowledge of religion versus spirituality, it can help us get more in touch with our culture. As I always say, and I quote Marimba Annie, culture is our defense system against white supremacy. A lot of things can be avoided by just doing your culture and staying out of what I call white people shit, for lack of a better term. Oh, excuse me, sister. I didn't know that you was a sister. I couldn't see your picture, Faye from the Day. But I hope I answered your question. I had another question in here. Brother Maat says, you being a practitioner, do you feel a non-practitioner is qualified to speak on African spirituality? If so, in what capacity? And there are certain things you caution non-practitioners against mentioning. Anybody can have a discussion, right? But yes, there are some things that you need to have experienced to be qualified to speak on. For instance, when people want to bring up animal sacrifice, is not about just killing animals. And I can explain it to you, but there are some things in African tradition that you need to experience. I can explain to you the reason why, but there's some things you just need to experience. And there are other things in our tradition that if you haven't experienced them and you're not qualified to experience them, you just shouldn't really talk about them. Different things that go on in masquerades, different things that happen festivals. There's just some things that I can't really put into Western terminology. You just have to experience them. One brother said, are they considered sacred? Yes, some of them are considered sacred. And I want to be very clear, some things I can't share with you because it's a common practice in African spiritual systems to be bound to secrecy. So that's another hurdle. That's why I tell people, I try to get people involved so they can see it, because there are certain things within our traditions that people simply cannot talk about. And even when you see these books in stores, they have gotten permission from their priests to write these books. And that book, I guarantee you, they had to leave some things out simply because they can't discuss it. So I hope I answered your question on that, Brother Ma'at. Brother Kofi, Brother Sean, y'all got anything?
Oh, I just want to say, man, appreciate the bill, man. I've been waiting on the presentation all week, man, and it shouldn't be no excuse, man, for the family anymore to not to know their culture and their traditions. I mean, even if you don't want to study right now, man, if you just go to the Mossi channel, I mean, we have all type of stuff. We cover, you know, our focus is West Africa, but you know, we are branching out in other places. We in East Africa now. We in South Africa now. We've been in Central Africa. We've been in North Africa. So it's no excuse not to know anything of what's going on with African culture, African tradition. You know, I just behooves me sometimes when I'm on social media, and you know, people, you know, act like it's no access to any type of information when you got us, you know, us brothers, you know, putting in a lot of work, you know what I'm saying, to share this information to the people that may not know. So, you know, again, just subscribe to the Monster Warrior Clan channel. You know, we got all type of information dealing with our culture. And again, man, appreciate the bill, brother Ben.
Man, that's a great point, brother, because I hear that all the time. People say, well, I don't know where to look. I don't know where to start, even learning about my culture. We have a channel dedicated to just that. So the next time you hear that, share our channel with that individual. The next time you hear that, tell them about the Mossi Warrior Clan. And we're not only aiming for you to just study or get a working knowledge. If you want to get involved, we're aiming to get that up and running. I can refer you to priests now, but we're aiming to get that more solidified so that we can actually get you involved on a more deeper level if that's what you choose to do. So I'm not saying everybody should be a priest or everybody should be a practitioner. I'm not that delusional to think that, but I will say that everybody should know a little bit about their lineage, a little bit about where they come from and what your people were doing before the ransack of Islam and Christianity came about. I think everybody deserves to know that. Everybody, that's your right to know about your people, and I don't think nobody should keep you from that right. So if we ain't got no okay, somebody asked me what am I initiate of, why did I choose to do it? Okay, I'm an initiate of what's called an Egungun society, which is an ancestral society. And what made me go that route is the power of African masquerades, the art of African masquerades, the feeling of African masquerades. I had attended a few African masquerades before I joined the society. So I knew what I was getting into, and I wanted to be a part of the ancestral veneration in the community, honoring our ancestors in the ways of our ancestors in which they did that. I wanted to learn those ways. I wanted to learn that what they call awo, or the mysteries, the secrets of venerating of ancestors. I wanted to learn that. So that's why I did that. The brother of Jehudi Maya says, does African traditional spirituality update itself with new science and technology discovered or presented? As I was saying earlier, African spirituality is always testing, especially with herbs and medicine and things of that nature. A lot of books that you find on African spirituality, they will reference science, a science article, what science says, and they will equate it to something that they believe or they have in their epistemology. So African spirituality doesn't have a problem with science. It seems the other way around in some cases, just like African spirituality doesn't really have a problem with religion. They don't try to force people or nothing like that. It's the other way around with the religious zealots that want to stomp out African spirituality. So yes, they do experiments. They do read books. You have a lot of practitioners and priests and other things like that that have degrees in science. So it's not an anti-type thing.
Bay, we did have a question for you, Bay.
Who did it? With all those
Yeah, now go up.
I'm going up. Okay, it's calling certain African practices spooky, offensive. I've heard this said about certain practices or explanations on initiation. Let's look at the definition of spooky. So the definition of spooky is sinister or ghostly in a way that causes fear and unease. That is not what African spirituality does. It doesn't put you at unease. It's not sinister. So I would say that they're using that in the wrong word. They're using that. It's not in the correct context. Now, what people are probably referring to is spookism. So let's look up spookism real quick. Spookism says the belief or practice of communicating with spooks or spirits, especially spiritual dabblers in wireless, and spookism has specially equipped set that collects the voices of the dead. And that's a definition I just got off of Google. So when I see that it says belief in practice of communicating with spooks or spirits, especially, I tend to expand my mind because we are not just concrete thinkers. What exactly is spirit? Well, Jabo posted this a couple times. What is spirit made of, right? What is spirit made of? He kept posting it, and I saw a variety of answers. But I kept saying that, it was made up of quantitative property that must be transferred to an object in order to perform work on. Nobody really caught on to what I was saying. I gave you the definition of energy. That's all spirit is. That is what Africans are describing. Energy, different types of energy. So in that context, everybody engages in spookism. Science engages in spookism. Religion engages in spookism. Everybody engages in spookism because the spook in the spirit is energy. That is what African spirituality is talking about. And we keep saying law of energy conservation says energy does not die, but we don't apply it to our traditions because we don't understand what they were trying to say. So yes, it's a bit offensive, but it's more ignorant. And you know, I'll just leave it at that. Sometimes you just got to know what you're talking about. But you know, that's why we're here. You know, that's why we're here. That's why we explain these things. That's why you know, we put together this team. Is there any more questions? I agree, Jehudi. I agree with that. So if no further questions, I'm gonna go ahead and get to bed. I gotta be up at like 4 or something in the morning. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for listening. Like, share, subscribe. You know, tell your friends about the channel, man. As Kofi said, we got a lot of information on this channel from various parts of Africa. We're doing the homework for y'all now, and it ain't easy. So, you know, tell folks about us, man. Share the page. You got something to say? Close us out.
Yeah, man. A lot of times people will get confused and really understanding my point of view. And my job, right? I signed up to get people from under the yoke, right, of the religions that enslaved our people. That's what I signed up for. There is no way, no matter what I say, that I could take you away from who you really are, your natural connection. We are nature. I can't disturb that. You know what I'm saying? I cannot disturb that. So words and terms disturb that. So what I would like to say is people need to get more interested into understanding the words that the Africans were using, understand the context in the words that they were using, and recognize that no civilized population, no nomadic population, no population on planet Earth could ever survive without understanding its natural environment. So it will be impossible for the Africans to make it for as long as they did without understanding, one, nature, and two, how to manipulate nature, you know what I'm saying, to make the next generation move forward. Impossible. And so you need to learn terms and languages and get engulfed into the spiritual systems. And so I'm not the one to say that everything that they came up with within their culture was right or even scientific. I'm not saying that. And I'm saying that everything does not have to be scientific, right? But you got to know there are processes within African culture that were scientific. It couldn't have been no other way. Now, it might not have been, quote unquote, the methodology that modern science uses, because even the modern science of methodology comes from an ancient system. So the groundwork has been laid for science, and it's in Africa. It's just that simple. And all the scientists will tell you this. There is not a scientist that walks around today. There is not a physician that walks around today that will not give the credit back to Africa. The Greeks gave credit. The Romans gave credit. The Europeans gave credit. It's just the fools amongst us that don't want to understand it. So, you know, practice your African systems. Learn it. But be willing to change things if need be within that system. Because that's really what we really signed up for. We signed up for the truth. And nobody knows everything. So I just want to put that out there, man. I love my brothers, man. You know what I mean? I love my sisters. I mean, I really love the Mossi clan, man. Like, man, that's what it's about, man. A lot of videos on the damn channel. Okay? Regular, consistent, well advertised. All the conversations we having right now, I hate to say it, man, a lot of the information is on the channel. About the art. I mean, Kofi did a piece about artwork. You know what I'm saying? What does art mean to the African? What's that part of their spiritual system? Right. Everything you do should be part of your spiritual system. My closing words is, man, check this out. Your spirituality needs to be your reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we thank y'all for coming out, man. Lafayette Mandala Bibi Fuhudie or Dabo, which means goodbye, and enjoy your Saturday. Peace.